Wrong bait, wrong depth. Don't make this same mistake that we've done. And also, I'll tell you a story about what happened last week. Hey there, I'm Joe Simons, like diamonds.
And I'm Luke Simons.
Good looking shirt there. We've got our little Salt Strong shirts on, man, and new hats, new patch hats. These things are fancy.
Yep, let's talk. This is a big deal. This is the most. I would say this is the most overlooked aspect of fishing that is causing people to get skunked, even when they're in a good spot, which is the worst. It's hard enough to find a good spot, and it's a slap in the face when you don't catch any, especially when other people are catching fish in that spot, as Joe's story alludes to.
Yes, I'll tell the story of what happened, and we'll kind of break it down. And not picking on any of these people I'm about to tell the story about. We have been there more times than not. It's this is not just about beginners or newbies or tourists or anything. This is something that happens more often than not when you don't even know it, is the worst part, right, Luke? And it's not talked about enough. So we are going to do our best to bring light to this wrong bait, wrong depth issue. So I was out fishing with Captain Peter Deeks. We're doing a little filming, and we were doing a half day, actually less than a half day, basically starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, had to be done by noon. So like had to be like, meaning back at the ramp, not just like finished fishing. And we were going on a gator hunt. So we're doing some a gator hunt for a special event. So we essentially, let's just say, had 3.5 hours to catch some fish. So Peter normally likes to go up in the river, go after the trophy trout this time of year. If you follow Peter Deeks, Captain Peter Deeks on Instagram, he's catching some monster trout and snook and redfish up in the river. I was like, man, we don't have time to do all that. Let's just meet at Cape Canaveral because, right there, you can launch your boat and just fish right there at the jetty. He's like, we're literally not even going to put the big engine on. I mean, except to go for 100 yards. So we do that, and we are fishing right next to where, I don't know, let's just say 30 other anglers are fishing off of this little pier. So we're right next to them, to the point that our lines got tangled multiple times, just so you can kind of get an idea how close we are. Like, they're trying not to hit us with their baits. We're trying not to interfere with them. I'm sure it's probably frustrating for pier guys to have the boats come do that, but it is what it is. So not right off the bat, but pretty quickly, we get into a snook. It ended up being like a 40-inch snook, and then another, and then another, and then another, and another, all in that same spot while everyone's watching. Like, I was pretty pumped because we're on a salt strung boat and we're catching some monster snook. Not a single person. There was at least 15. There was probably 30 at one point during that time frame. Some tourists came up, but a minimum of 12 to 15 people fishing with something in the water, like meaning they were actually fishing. They had a line in the water. Not a single person there caught a fish. And so let me describe what I saw. So I could very closely see it. They were right there. The two guys on the far right. And by the way, if you're familiar with that, this is where cruise ships go out of. So we were a little bit off of the channel, but it was still, let's just say 14, 15 feet deep where we were fishing and where they were fishing as well. They had bobbers, and I could see, because I could see what they were using. They had little shrimp. So they did have shrimp, which was good, but they had bobbers, and they probably had around 6 feet of monas. So essentially they were fishing right there in the middle of the water column. The guys next to them were fishing like some Rapala lures, not like deep swimming. So once again, they were up at the top of the water column. One guy with a top water, a couple guys with spoons. There's stuff all over the place. There were a couple that knew what they were doing and had their bait on the bottom. And it was interesting. It was pretty quiet that day in terms of wind, and we were that close. So after we caught 3 or 4 of them, I saw this one guy was sitting next to the other guy on the pier, and he's like, man, what are they doing? And the other guy's like, oh, well, they're just sitting right on top of them. They know where all the fish are. And I'm like, dude, you literally I could hear him say that. And I didn't obviously reply, but I told Peter, I was like, you hear him? He's like, oh yeah, they all think it's, that it's something special about us being in the boat. I was like, did they not see that our lines have been tangled? We're literally fishing the exact same spot for these fish. And he's like, yeah, he's like, he said what the title of this, he's like, man, they got the wrong bait at the wrong depth. And so because Peter has a network, which we'll talk about in a second, he knew that's not even the main area he's been fishing, but he had the network to reach out to say, hey, what's working at the Cape right now? And like, actually right now, because this could change tomorrow when you hear this, but it was really, really big, like oversized shrimp. He's like, the snook and even the redfish down there, That's all they're dialed in on. I've been with Peter in the same area where it's just croakers or it's just mullet. Sometimes you could just catch them on the prawn. And also, he went way down in size. He's like, these are getting a ton of pressure. Who knows how many lines they're seeing in there? He's like, we're going to go as small as we possibly can with the leader and as small as we can with the hook. So massive shrimp, crazy small hook. Like we had one hook that actually bent because you got a 40-inch snook and a small hook that does happen sometimes. Literally bent the whole hook. So that was like the aha moment. I told Luke, is like, man, we got to do a podcast on that because it's so common. And all those people, once again, they thought that they couldn't cast out far enough. It was the boat that was giving them the advantage. They were literally fishing the exact same spot. They just weren't down low enough. Peter's like, if you're not fishing at the bottom on a place like that, you are not going to catch a single thing. Unless, it happened to be a time of year where like Spanish mackerel were running, but there wasn't. At that time of year, it was 100% snook and redfish on the bottom. Heck, we could see them on the fish finder, so that I guess one advantage. We knew they were down there, but we were catching them, and no one else caught anything. So I know I've spewed out a lot there, but that was the story, and that's, like I said, it's so common and it's so frustrating. I know a lot of those people went home like, oh man, there's nothing there. Or only people in boats can catch them. But they just had the wrong bait at the wrong depth.
Yeah, but not all wrong baits, right? Just having the wrong depth is enough to not get skunked. Correct. And this isn't just for live bait fishing either. Same thing for lures. Depth control is everything. And this box right here, I got a tackle bag. This is in my tackle bag every single trip. It's the most valuable piece of data or of equipment for me for fishing. And it is, if you can't see it, this is my box of jig heads and weighted hooks, where for all of my soft plastic lures, I have riggings for shallow water, mid depth, like, shallow meaning 2.5 feet or less, mid depth 3 to 5, even some heavy ones for going down to 30 to even 60 range. So if I forget this is what I'm turning back for to go fishing. But if I forget my plugs or my leader line, I'll still go fishing. But I will not go without the depth. Because
talking about your hair plugs.
What's that?
When you forget hair plugs, what plugs?
Hair plugs.
That was a joke. Yeah.
Sorry. Over my head.
Oh yeah, your hair.
But yeah, it's just depth control is crucial. And again, even taking people fishing, and I'll say, hey, you need to use a 1/4 ounce jig head, and they're throwing a 1/8 weighted hook, and they're not going to catch anything, almost guaranteed. If especially once the sun's coming up, like Joe was mentioning, they're in a high traffic area. The sun's up, the fish are not going to be at the surface. They're going to be on the bottom 95% of the time. And so in general, the best approach when in doubt, get your lures or baits on the bottom. That's where most of the feeding happens.
Yeah. And it was same for us. We had one angler on the boat that was a little bit newer to saltwater fishing and was having trouble getting to the bottom or not being able to feel the bottom. And Peter showed him how to do it. He's like, listen, here's, how deep it is. Keep putting more line out. There's going to be a little bit of current. And once you could feel that, he's like, oh, I got it. Because it wouldn't catch anything. There's just no chance. But this guy's, that's the sad part. Peter's like, yeah, I want to tell him, but you also don't want to be the person yelling up because no one likes a Mr. Know-It-All. But they actually had the right shrimp. We could see they had pretty big size shrimp. The same thing we were using. They just had bobbers stopping the shrimp from getting down. So they had bobbers because they wanted to be able to see if something hit it. And they sat there that entire time. I felt horrible for them without a single bite. They might have had a couple pinfish come up and nibble at it or something, but they didn't catch anything because they had maybe 6 feet max of leader line underneath that bobber. So that shrimp was just sitting there and snook. Nope, not going to happen. Well, I guess knowing that that, what do you do to make sure you're at the right water column, right? Because there are some times where it's not the bottom, right? How do you know, like if you're going to a spot, how do you instinctively know, all right, that's the jig head I'm going to use, or that's the weighted hook I'm going to use?
Because it's very rare where the best bite isn't on the bottom. And so I always use a jig head that I know is heavy enough to where I could feel it bounce in the bottom. Because if I'm doing a twitch and I don't feel the bottom on almost every twitch, then I know I don't have quite enough weight. Same point, I don't want to be getting snagged all the time either, which is why now I use a lot of those weedless. We have those weedless round eye jig heads. These things are amazing. But yeah, either way, I now have made just a strict rule where if I can't, and I'm using sensitive rods, which helps tremendously, but if I can't feel the bottom on almost every twitch, then time to switch, time to go back to my box and reassess.
Maybe said a different way too. If I was listening and I'm like, well, man, I've heard you guys talk about the skinny lipper or a topwater lure like the moonwalker. When would you use that? Because obviously that's not on the bottom.
Yeah, right. That's for the twilight. That's for when the periods when the fish are active. Where because the only con of fishing the bottom is that it takes long. Right, you have to cast out. You have to let it get down to the bottom. You have to do a little bit slow retrieve so that it's bouncing bottom. When the fish are lethargic, you have to do that. Like even this was a picture. This is in the middle of the day a couple weekends ago. I was at Boca Grande. My wife wanted to do a little boat ride, so I grabbed one. I always take at least one rod. So I grabbed a rod and I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I stop at this dock real quick to make some casts?" And there's a bunch of other boats similar to that. A bunch of other. There's probably I don't know 6 boats fishing this dock, and there was one little small opening. So I kept the boat away and I cast it in, and they were catching nothing. But I was bouncing bottom with the Prawn USA while they were using live bait. And the fact that I was just covering water and I was feeling every structure, I felt one piece of structure that was like 20 feet off the dock. And I almost got snagged the first time and got it out again because I'm weedless. And I made another cast, and that's when I got the thump. And that was the only fish I saw anybody catch. And so we caught that fish, released it, and left. So I'm sure like those people were like, "What the heck just happened?" But yeah. So when I use a skinny lipper, I'm using that basically. That's my first lure. If I'm fishing the mornings during the twilights, the fish are going to be more aggressive, and especially springtime and early summer, they're going to get up shallow to feed. So when they're up there shallow, if it's only 2 feet of water, you don't have to bounce the bottom in 2 feet of water, right? It's only 2 feet. But when you're in 15 feet of water, they're not going to come up 6 feet to go grab a lure. They might come up one or two, but yeah, in the shallow water, you don't have to bounce bottom every time. So that skinny lipper, that's a shallow running lure. That's what I'm basically burning the flats with early in the morning. It casts an absolute mile. And so if I'm using the skinny lipper and whoever's next to me is throwing like a saw plastic, I automatically know that I'll catch more fish than them. It's almost every time I'll catch more fish simply, but not because I'm a better angler, but I'm able to cover more water. And that's like the one guarantee statistically, if we can cover more water than the person next to us, with a lure that's around the same profile and has similar action, whoever's covering water is going to catch more fish. So the plug can fish faster. Get them use that when the fish are aggressive, but as soon as they're not aggressive, quick switch, go saw plastic or go something that can trigger strikes when they're a little bit more lethargic. And at that point, you almost always have to be on the bottom.
Love it. Let's talk about the network effect as well, because that was something that Peter used to know to even use the shrimp at that time. Because like that was what they're dialed in. And he had a couple little pinfish and stuff. We dropped them down, didn't get touched. We tried it multiple times. Like they were only dialed in for that, whatever, for that given day on the shrimp. So the network effect, we talk about that in our private community. We have 60,000 people in there. And like I saw a recent one, we had a new Texas member, hadn't been fishing all year, going on his first trip. He's like, "Man, what are you guys seeing?" And we have a coach in Texas, happened to be in the same area. He's like, "Man, I was just out there. Here's exactly what I'm seeing." So it's not that Peter's friends or his network gave him the GPS spot. They're just telling him the trends. Like, "Hey, here's what we're seeing. They're down low. They're only eating really big shrimp right now. Go down on your leader, go down on your hook." That kind of stuff. That saved the day, right? Because had we gone out there with big jig heads and heavier stuff, we probably wouldn't have caught any or as many for sure. And so that network effect is critical. Every great angler we've been out with, Luke, including some of these tournament guys who travel the country fishing redfish tournaments, they're like, "Man, you're only as good as your network. You got to have a network to rely on."
Yeah, network is crucial, because for many years I would actually spend. I'm an analyst, so I would take documents and document the. I would print out my tide charts and notch exactly what I caught throughout the tide cycle, and I organize them by month, so that I'd have year over year data, which was kind of helpful. But then my biggest bump ever, and actually relates back to Peter Deeks, is when I moved over to Melbourne as fishing new territory. One of buddies I met over there, he was a teacher. I was a financial analyst. On the weekends we'd fish a lot, and we started joining some tournaments. We got to the point where we're catching like low to mid 20-inch trout most trips. Like, hey, we might have a chance at these tournaments. And Peter Deeks was one of the captains. So these tournaments had like 30-40 boats. the captains were on the water every day, so they had a huge advantage. But us weekend warriors were like determined to get better or to compete with them. And so obviously, we struggled at first, and then we started befriending some of the other anglers who were also weekend warriors, and we started helping each other out. Where the fact that we couldn't be on the water every day, at least one of us out of 4 teams, at least one of us was able to get out within the last few days before a tournament, and we would just share what we saw. Similar to that, hey, they're feeding on this size shrimp, or they're feeding on topwater, or whatever. And as we started doing that, we went from like barely ever placing to like at least one of those 4 teams. Sometimes all 4 of us were in the money, and it was all based on the network effect. And so if you don't have a network, that is a highly recommend taking action on there. And obviously, Salt Strong Club, I would say, is the way to go. It's the biggest saltwater fishing network that I believe is ever created. But yeah, we have the community, and you can get in there and see real time catches from members. You can go to chapter meetings and meet people. The network effect was my biggest surprise in fishing, as far as the actual impact that it makes. And yeah, Joe's story is like a 1-day impact, but just over time, as you just get more, as you expand that network, it is the biggest game changer ever.
Love it. Cool. Well, that's it. Come join us, saltstrong.com. If you're not a member, if you are a member, make sure to get in there. And we're giving away thousands of dollars of free stuff every month just for being in the community, just for posting and being active in there. We've got now partner deals with everything from trolling motors and even some skiffs and kayaks, some really big items. One item, I think it's $7,000 off if you're an insider member. Pretty crazy. And of course, we're doing tackle discounts every day, all day for our members. Got many members save $400 or $500 a year just on the tackle discounts alone. So come join us. We're even giving free tackle out every month is a tackle tester program. That's all at saltstrong.com. And Luke, I got to tell you something here real quick. I got a pretty big fight with my wife, Lauren. Yeah, she was mad that I continue to keep acting like a flamingo. Finally put my foot down. Yeah, Joe, how to use it. All right, guys, we appreciate you big time. We'll talk to you on the next episode, and hopefully this is helpful. This is a little bit shorter one than normal, but just happened. I had to tell that story because I don't think those 15 to 20 people were alone, meaning I think this happens more often than not when we're actually fishing in an area where there's fish, which is the worst, and aren't catching them because we don't have the right bait or the right depth. Talk to you on the next episode. Peace. We out.
See you.